Thought I'm going to make a hasty retreat, and I bolted out the back of the theater, and I went to the men's room thinking that heat would blow over and maybe he wouldn't notice me. I was really concerned that he wouldn't be pleased with it. I really so didn't want to disappoint. And he was like, oh, and he'd try and top it. And and my assistant was there, and he left because he couldn't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
The air had turned cold. Mm-hmm. And then he left, and I wanted to leave, and because I knew that I didn't want to work with him.
For decades, Mel Gibson's name has been tied to controversy. But what happens when one of Hollywood's most infamous outsiders points the finger at others? This isn't about casual disagreements or awkward encounters. This is about deep fractures that challenge Hollywood's polished image. From strange rooftop meetings to accusations of selective justice, Gibson insists the system is rigged, fake, and deeply dishonest. By the end of this video, you'll see how 5 names, 5 clashes, form a bigger picture about Hollywood's hidden cracks. And when you hear number 3, you'll understand why even insiders were stunned he said it aloud. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Number 1, Winona Ryder. It began with an encounter that Ryder says left scars far beyond a private party. The setting seemed ordinary enough. Actors, friends, and industry names mingling in the familiar rhythm of Hollywood gatherings. But for Winona Ryder, that night carried a moment she could never quite erase. Conversations turned sharp when Gibson, according to Ryder, made remarks that were not only cruel, but laced with anti-Semitism. What might have passed as a forgettable evening for most became, in her telling, an unforgettable stain. Ryder has spoken about the incident with a tone of hurt that years haven't softened. She described not only being targeted, but watching a close friend become a subject of Gibson's words as well. The effect lingered, not just as a story of awkwardness, but as something that left her feeling diminished in a space where she was supposed to belong. Gibson, for his part, has denied the accusation, saying the exchange didn't happen the way she remembers. The denial only deepened the divide, raising the tension between 2 very different accounts. What makes this clash stand out is how early it began tracking Gibson's reputation in the public eye. Ryder was respected, beloved even, and her version of events carried the weight of credibility audiences tended to accept. Her willingness to retell the story in later years showed how lasting the wound was, shaping her view not only of Gibson, but of Hollywood's capacity for silence when faced with cruelty. Gibson's rebuttal did little to erase the narrative. Instead, it highlighted the conflicting realities that defined his career. Claims of double standards, whispers of alienation, and the uneasy status of being both inside and outside Hollywood's circle. The moment between him and Ryder revealed more than personal friction. It exposed how quickly manners could dissolve and how fragile Hollywood's mask of civility really was. Number 2, Christopher Walken. Not every feud begins with insults. Some begin with a feeling you can't shake. That's how Mel Gibson described one of the strangest meetings of his career. A rooftop encounter with Christopher Walken that left him unsettled long after it ended. The spot itself was odd, perched high above the city, with a giant neon sign glowing the numbers 666 in the background. Gibson was there with his assistant, and while it may have just been a coincidence, that eerie glow created an atmosphere that seemed linked to what followed. Walken, known for his unusual delivery and unpredictable screen presence, carried that same energy off-camera. According to Gibson, the conversation turned bizarre as Walken started talking about violent images, even mentioning torture in casual tones. It wasn't loud or angry, but the way it was said left both Gibson and his assistant glancing at each other, sensing something off. For most people, it could have been brushed aside as eccentric performance, but Gibson claimed the energy hung over the evening like a shadow. The rooftop itself lingered in Gibson's memory almost like a stage set. the city lights below, the glowing numbers, Walken's calm but strange words. He left convinced this wasn't just awkward small talk, but a glimpse at something darker. It fed into his long-standing suspicion that Hollywood wasn't as light-hearted and glamorous as people believed. While Walken may have been simply eccentric, Gibson interpreted the night as proof that certain personalities carried destructive energy he wanted to stay away from. Later, in half-joking fashion, Gibson referred to Walken as the Antichrist. It wasn't just a throwaway laugh line. It revealed how seriously he took those instincts. To Gibson, that rooftop wasn't quirky or amusing. It was another reminder that Hollywood is filled with shadows hiding behind a polished surface. Number 3. Pedro Pascal. When Hollywood crowns a rising star, Gibson argues, it often comes with strings attached. Pedro Pascal has become one of the most recognizable faces of the past few years, thanks to his lead role under the helmet in The Mandalorian and as the hardened survivor in The Last of Us. Audiences embraced him quickly, seeing him as both a versatile performer and a likable personality. But in Gibson's eyes, that meteoric rise wasn't just about acting talent. It was about playing into Hollywood's favorite storyline. Gibson points out that Pascal's roles, as beloved as they are, follow a familiar pattern. The protective loner, guiding a younger figure through danger, has become Pascal's trademark across different projects. It works, and critics praise it. But Gibson questions whether that repetition is creativity or formula. The concern for him is that the praise seems to ignore limits in range, elevating Pascal in ways that feel more about timing and visibility than artistic exploration. The other element troubling Gibson is Pascal's off-screen voice. Pascal regularly uses his platform to share strong political views that often match the dominant culture of the industry. For Hollywood, this alignment adds to his popularity. Social media posts translate into headlines, and those headlines reinforce his position as not just a performer, but a figure of approval. Gibson sees it differently. Less about artistry, more about careful image management. Here's the conflict Gibson raises. Does Hollywood embrace Pascal purely for his craft, or because his message matches theirs? The suggestion is that selective justice shapes careers, support and promotion for those who echo the cultural line, silence for those who don't. To Gibson, Pascal represents how performance can be drowned out by politics, which leaves one question hanging. Are audiences drawn to Pascal the actor, Pascal the activist, or a blend of both? Number 4. Robert De Niro. This one cuts deep, not because of insults, but because of lost respect. For years, Mel Gibson admired Robert De Niro in the way many actors did. De Niro was a towering figure, someone whose performances in classics reshaped what it meant to be a serious actor. To Gibson, he was not just another star, but an example of how artistry could push limits without compromise. Watching De Niro, he saw what an actor could be when the work itself was sacred. But that admiration didn't last. Over time, Gibson began to speak less of De Niro as an artist, and more of him as a voice drowning in politics. What unsettled Gibson wasn't just disagreement in views, but the sense that the craft had been pushed aside for constant commentary. Instead of interviews centered on roles, projects, or creative risks, De Niro became known for his sharp political statements. What once inspired Gibson now symbolized a shift in priorities, from immersion in art to immersion in headlines. For Gibson, this is exactly what corrodes the industry. He has always insisted that performance should stand alone, free from the noise of partisan fights. De Niro, unapologetic in his activism, became the exact opposite of that. The speeches, the outbursts, the interviews, they made De Niro a cultural figure beyond film. But that transformation was precisely what Gibson rejected. To him, using celebrity as an amplifier for politics undermines the purity of acting, bending it toward an agenda rather than emotional truth on screen. Number 5. Alec Baldwin. If there's one name Gibson uses as proof of Hollywood's double standard, it's Alec Baldwin. The center of it all is the Rust tragedy, an on-set shooting that left one person dead and another injured. Baldwin was holding the weapon when it fired, instantly thrusting him into the kind of scandal that most actors could never recover from. The incident shocked audiences worldwide and raised relentless questions about responsibility, safety, and accountability within an industry that often shields its own. For Gibson, the way Baldwin's career and reputation endured in spite of the tragedy revealed something bigger than a single event. He argues that Baldwin never truly shouldered the weight of responsibility and instead stood behind the protection of Hollywood's inner circle. To Gibson, the details didn't matter as much as the outcome. The industry closed ranks around Baldwin, ensuring he faced scrutiny, but not the kind of exile Gibson himself has shouldered for years. Gibson's conflicts often look like personal fights, but put together, they show something larger. Each story adds to a picture of him as the outsider pointing at cracks most would rather ignore. In his eyes, Hollywood punishes some while protecting others, bending rules to fit whoever has power in the moment. His exile may have left him on the outside of the spotlight, but it also gave him space to question what that spotlight really means. Is Hollywood truly honoring art, standing for ethics, or just playing a survival game built on appearances and influence?